So as we join from many different parts of the world today, some of us are in our workplaces and some of us are home. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, which is where I live and make my home. I would also like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. And for us, we are part of the Kulin Nation. And to all of the traditional owners of the land where that you live and the waters that surround our land. So please take a moment, everyone, to acknowledge where you are. And I've just seen in the chat that Paula Kirby has just gone, oh my God, Andrea, well said. I think that was about my WTF comment. If any of you have the opportunity, do speak with Paula. She wrote a brilliant LinkedIn post, and what I might do is get her to share that with me, and we'll put it in a follow-up email around her experience as a candidate. So she's had a lot of fun with that. I'm going to ask Steve Gard to join me on the stage right now, and here he
Hello,
is.
good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Gard. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Very quiet. You might want to turn your volume up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Is that better?
That's better. Thank you,
Excellent.
darling. Good. Okay, so many of you know Steve Gard from his Circle Back initiative, which he started. How long ago, Steve?
It was June last year, so not quite
June last year. And I remember we had a huge discussion about it, and lots and lots of talks, and it has just gone flying with loads of companies joining you. So when we were deciding to put this together today, he was obviously the first person to call on to be our expert. So if you don't know who Talent Table are, we run events for the TA, talent, people analytics, HR community. We have a focus a little bit more on talent acquisition. That is my background, but we are looking to do wider events. And we also have a tribe you can join, which is a developing tribe, and we're going to develop it into be the clever place where clever people go to get answers. And at the moment, there's a big discussion going on there around agency usage. One of our tribe members is having some discussions and questions about that. Part of our tribe is also to have a number of expert consultants that join me to host these events and are also there to provide their expertise and are also available for consulting projects and things. And I'm very proud that Steve is one of our expert consultants. So, Steve, I'm just going to share our screen. And while I do that, just take a moment to introduce yourself.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. So, hi, I'm Steve, as Andrew mentioned. So I've been a career recruiter. It's all I've ever done. So did 8 years agency and then saw the light and came over in-house
We have frozen.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, great. I
froze, but
it's not me.
Apparently everyone is still going.
Cool, great. Okay, I'll carry on. So have I run out of time? So I've been a career recruiter. I've been in-house running TA teams for the last sort of 12 years. My last role was head of TA, Good Start Early Learning. And 2 years ago, I decided to start my own business to help organizations with their TA strategy. And obviously, when COVID hit last year, a lot of the consulting work I was doing or had the pipeline just completely disappeared. And that's really where the Circle Back initiative sort of started to kick in. Andrew, I can't see any slides. I don't know if you've got slides coming up or...
I'm trying to get the slides coming up. I'm just going to stop sharing and start again. I was just running around to my team saying, "Can you see the slides?"
I'll keep going and give some sort of background on the Circle Back initiative. Yes, shall I?
Yes, and then I'll bring it up to that slide. There we go.
Okay. So I joined Andrew's fantastic group last year when my consulting work sort of really disappeared. I joined Jobs for Australia, so the wonderful initiative that Rich and Andrew and Justin Figo put together. And it was really there that I was really for the first time in I think any time in my career, I was actually on the candidate side of coaching them around their CV, around their interview, around their job searches. We were doing this via Zoom, and one thing that I was seeing was just the anxiety and the stress that these candidates and these job seekers were going through. You know, all of them were pretty much involuntary job seekers, many for the first time in many, many years, trying to navigate their way through a really, really difficult job market. And often, you know, they had lots of hope when they were finding a role that that came up in their particular location, or a role that was right for them. Lots of hope with their applications. They were spending time making those applications, honing their CVs, writing really good cover letters, but invariably not hearing back from those applications. So we'd often have sort of, we'd have that first conversation with them around their CV, and then we'd follow up a couple of weeks later. And 9 times out of 10, I was saying, I've applied for this, I spent loads of time doing my CV, and I've not heard anything back at all. We even heard people going for interview and not hearing back. And really, I could see that the employers ignoring these applicants and job seekers was really affecting people's mental health and their well-being, and actually their confidence to keep going and applying and really put the effort into their applications. So Circle Back really came from, okay, so how can we start to change the mindset? I've got a bit of time on my hands. How can we start to change this problem? It's been a problem for many years, but it was really compounded during COVID. And my thought was, if I can get 10 employers on board that can showcase actually what is good practice, hopefully we can start to encourage other employers. So I'd hoped for 10 to 15 employers to help me to influence others. And we've now got 66 as of yesterday across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. And what we ask employers to do, and it's free to sign up, we ask employers to commit to 5 standards across their recruitment process. And for me, these are really entry-level standards, and we wanted to make them a level where anybody really could join, whether you've got a recruitment team or an ATS or not. So the first standard is around that application acknowledgement. So we expect everybody that applies to a role to receive an application acknowledgement. And in there, we don't want the wording such as only shortlisted applicants will be contacted, or if you don't hear from us within 4 weeks, please presume your application is unsuccessful. So we said to our employers, you know, we don't want that wording in those application acknowledgements. The next one is every applicant who applies and is unsuccessful on their application receives an email outcome. So this is before assessment and before interview. So anybody that applies that isn't quite right, they get an email outcome or any other written communication. So that could be by WhatsApp, it could be by SMS, it could be by email. Then for the candidates that progress to phone interview or some kind of online assessment, again, an unsuccessful outcome from that should be at least a minimum email communication back to that candidate. Anybody that a employer meets for a face-to-face or live video interview, we're asking our employers to call those candidates with feedback. Now, for very, very high volume recruiters, if you think about sort of casuals in Christmas casuals in retail, where we're recruiting thousands and thousands of people all in one go, what we've said is actually, as long as the candidates' expectations have been met at interview or before interview, you can email those candidates with their outcome. And the reason we've said that is, one, obviously we don't want to overburden the recruiters and make it really stressful for recruiters trying to call, you know, thousands of people. And secondly, actually, if you're towards the bottom of that list of candidates to be called, it could be 2, 3, 4 weeks before we actually reach you. And that is not a great candidate experience in itself. So for really high volume, we do allow email, but for majority of the roles, it's a call. And then within the job advert wording, again, not using terminology such as only shortlisted applicants will be responded to. So
sorry, Steve.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, now share, I haven't done a slide for you, I do apologise, but talk about what it is you've got going forward and what it's going to grow into.
Yeah, so we've got, as I said, we've got 66 employers now. Majority of those in Australia and New Zealand. We've got some in the UK as well, which we launched just before Christmas. We are looking at launching in the US and other countries as well. But importantly, in Australia and New Zealand, the next step for us, and we're just about to launch our first recruitment agency that's going to sign up to this initiative as well. Now, we've got slightly different standards for those agencies because obviously they don't control the whole process, but very, very similar standards. So we're asking recruitment agencies to also sign up to that because we feel that obviously they've got a responsibility as well to treat candidates with respect. We're also launching a platinum employer version, which is a paid version because we will then audit those employers against those standards that we've set. But also we're adding in 3 additional standards, and one of those is linked to that recruitment agency. Sorry, my phone's ringing. A recruitment agency initiative or standard that we're actually asking the employees now to extend their commitment into their supply chain. So if you're engaging with recruitment agencies going forward, we ask them to either be a Circle Back Initiative agency or put those 5 standards I've just talked about into the contracts as SLAs with those agencies as well. So we're asking now the employers to push that beyond what they're doing, but into the supply chain of people that are working on their behalf. And then
that's an amazing initiative, Steve. And golly, if we all just did those 5 things, imagine how much better a candidate experience would be.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and we're actually getting some really good feedback from candidates, from some of the Circle Back Initiative employees, where we're seeing candidates saying, I actually specifically applied to you guys and I put more effort into my application because I saw that you got back to everyone, so I knew it was worth my time. We're seeing candidates that maybe are going through the recruitment process and it might be taking a little bit longer, but are actually saying, do you know what? I don't mind jumping through these interview hoops necessarily because, again, I know that I'm going to get an outcome of this. So we're seeing lots of benefits starting to come through, and really it's win-win for everyone here. I don't think you can't talent pool properly if you don't get back to candidates. We all know we want to do that. There's commercial benefits for the organizations that I think have been talked about so much on LinkedIn in the past. So really it's win-win for everyone.
So I was just going to whiz quickly through. I think we all very much know what candidate experience is, but I've, just put it up there. It is very much about feelings. And I will say we've got a number of people in our group today. There's a couple of people that are still looking for work that have some horrendous stories to tell. And Paula, I notice, has shared her blog that she wrote as well. So it's happening to us as we are looking for work. So this is something that we really need to start solving. And we've all seen the statistics around, I'm moving too quickly, we've all seen the statistics around candidate experience and the actual business impact that it can have on the way that we work. So what I did next in helping to sort of set the discussion for this was I pulled up a whole lot of Steve's LinkedIn posts. And if you're not following him or you're not connected to him, I highly recommend that you do. Number one, he's the most brilliant storyteller, and the way he writes his posts is funny and poignant. And I think I did a fan post about him yesterday talking. I may have called him handsome. What I then did was pulled up all of his posts. So we're just going to whiz through this quickly and just give a quick overview on things, and then we're going to move to some roundtable discussion points. So the first thing that came up in Steve's posts was around creating desire versus creating questions. And you modelled that on the AIDA marketing process, Steve. Do you want to just quickly talk to that?
Yeah. So So that marketing process, it's been used for years. It's been around since from the 70s. So it's creating attention, then creating interest, then creating desire, and then creating action. And that's often how we look at our job ads, right? So we're always trying to create desire. One of the ways that I don't think we do enough of is really create a decision stage. So instead of changing that, having that D as desire, having D as decision. So really planting in the minds of the candidates, is this the right role for me? Have I put enough information in that job ad to really make that candidate question whether it's the right one for me? So creating that desire is good, but we always tend to fall into that selling mode when we're writing job ads. If we want to really control and have a bit more influence around the quality of the applications we get and the volume, we need to think about creating questions in the mind of that candidate as well. So warts and all, what's it like to work it?
Now, I am about to bring, and she's going to be hopefully not surprised, Sally Mckibben to the stage from Indeed. So Sally, if you can just join us on the stage. So go to your profile. Here you are. So one of our partners, hi Sally, is one of our partners for our tribe events, which you are part of at the moment, is Indeed, and they are a huge supporter of us. And I'll tell the story, Sally, of when I first arrived back in Australia back in 2015. I couldn't believe that Seek still had such a monopoly on the business when Indeed offered a lot more services around programmatic advertising and the whole ability to search and find people and to have job ads reach a wider community was so much better in Indeed. So it's great to see you then join here in Australia and you know, keep chipping away, because I think the service Indeed offer is a brilliant one. But Sally, talk to us a little bit about what makes a good job ad for you.
Well, look, this is the $1 million question, and I think some of the challenges that we have in talent acquisition and recruitment are some parameters by which somebody else creates a template that then is war and peace. And do we ever get to what the actual job is doing? And am I a sales guru or a marketing ninja? These types of things are really not appealing to candidates. So, you know, the data that we're seeing is that keep it short and sweet, anything between 700 to 2,000 characters. We can actually see here they're receiving more than 30% greater applications than really long job advertisements. We also know that if the salary data, and I know that this is a sensitive topic, but I think somebody else, Paula, maybe you mentioned that in the chat, with salary data, you get better applications and a higher volume of applications for the role because people understand what they're applying for, and then it's going to make it easier through the process. You're managing people's expectations. However, we find that probably 20% of people are advertising a salary or a salary bracket. So it makes it really challenging for candidates to know, am I the right person for this role and does it meet my needs? So there's a lot of time wasting there. And we know that something like 65% of the job seekers decided not to apply because of the lengthy requirements and criteria. So, you know, if you've got this shopping list of you must have this, you must have that, you must have this, that is really challenging for candidates as well, because, you know, even if I think about myself, I worked for a recruitment agency for 11 years. I had multiple jobs within that organisation and thought myself very successful and employable. And when I was looking to make a move, I picked companies that I wanted to work for, big names, and there were long laundry lists of things like degrees. And we all know, like, is that actually essential for a sales role? Or even a talent acquisition role? Some of the best recruiters I know definitely haven't had a degree. So by putting these things on there, you're definitely ruling out a big percentage of candidates.
And we're just about to cover that, Sally. So I'm going to
excellent,
and we'll move on. So the next point that Steve talked about, and he actually, and I've put it up there, a brilliant message that I think Culture Amp used as part of their making it easy in their job ads, is making it really easy for candidates to apply for jobs. So Steve, over to you.
I think that these sort of statements, and I've just posted one this morning as well, another one from one of our Circle Back Initiative employers. These sort of statements, I think, really bring, not just demonstrate, how you can contact us and make it easy, but also the culture of the organisation as well. So I think making it easy for candidates to apply for jobs is a good thing to do. But one of the things what we're seeing again with Circle Back Initiative employers is that actually you can make it a little bit harder if they know they're going to get an outcome, if they know they're going to get return on their investment. So yeah, I think making it easy for candidates to apply, not getting them to jump through hoops, and having them the opportunity to actually talk to a human really will differentiate.
And I'm just going to bring Rich Lewis-Jones to the stage, not a stranger to many of us, who currently works for Smart Recruiters, who prides themselves on the application process. And we all know those dreadful ATSs that shall remain nameless, that have the most ridiculous candidate processes. That means people drop out very quickly. So, Rich, some points from you.
Yeah, I think for us, the big thing that what we did back in 2010 when we were looking at, candidate experience has been a thing since then. It's just right. So we spent 5 years researching if we're going to build something to launch into the market, how can we make candidate experience as frictionless as possible? And to Sally's point, keeping it short and sweet is one of those things. We live in a mobile, consumer-driven market, and candidates want to be able to apply for jobs, apply for them now, and they want to apply for them wherever they want. So removing as much friction as possible is really, really key. Now, Steve and I were talking before about the Circle Back initiative, and I think it's great that the candidates are actually spending a lot more time filling in questions that actually matter, rather than actually doing lots of long screening questions. There's a few steps where candidates will be dropping off in your process, and the one thing that people don't think about is even the login and password stage. I'll share an article in a moment that's on eremedia.com where 95% of candidates are dropping off at that point. So the talent pool that's actually ending up in your ATS because you're asking for a login and password are dropping off. Only 5% are getting into your platform. So it's incredibly important to remove that friction, make things like easy apply buttons. We've got one of those with Indeed, we've got one with Seek, we've got with LinkedIn, making sure that candidates' details can pass across. If they've got a Seek profile, most people who are looking for work have got one of those. So that, they've got an Indeed profile, can pass across into the platform, and they don't have to repeatedly fill in things in. Ask questions post that. If you want to start inline assessments, gamification, things where you can actually really start to engage the talent, those things are really, really important. I think having that Circle Back initiative, that layer, asking candidates questions, literally why they're right for the role, and knowing that they get that, that they're going to get a response is brilliant. So kudos to Steve for really driving that movement. Yes, technology is there to remove as much friction as possible, but I think, Paula, I know you're really passionate about it. Getting back to candidates just want communication and closure.
And we're about to talk about messaging. So, Rich, this is lovely. I'm going to turn you off. Thank you very much for your insights.
Can I just say one quick thing on this before Rich goes? Just really quick. I know you're pushing for time, but I think it's really important to think when we're building our application forms or processes or whatever we want to call it, is that we're often, the really arduous ones are often asking for marriage on the first date. And I know this is a phrase that's been used a lot, but if you have that in your mind, am I asking for marriage on the first date on this? Do I really need all of this information, this data, this data? Do I really need all of this on that first application. Because we ask for some stuff that we just don't need until we hire them, right? So just something to think about, I think.
Yes, I think there's an analogy in there as well about sort of sleeping with them before you sort of date them, and then you ask for marriage. So there's a brilliant analogy. And I'll just tell a story. If you're not on the Facebook group of Recruiting Brain Food, do take the time to go and join it. Jacob Sten Marsden, who's a great friend of mine from the UK, but also a very interesting character, very Danish, very particular, came on and was outraged that he had a senior position he was hiring for and people didn't include cover letters. And being quite old school, he expected the cover letter. And the comments came back saying, did you ask people to do that? Because these days, so many people are using their LinkedIn profiles and all of that sort of stuff to apply. So it's about setting those expectations up front with candidates. So I'm going to turn Rich off. Thank you for your gorgeous insights as well. And we're going to move on to messaging for candidates. And that old bugbear, only shortlisted candidates will apply. Now, we should actually, and I won't bring Sally back up on stage now, but we should actually find out, and you often post the numbers here, it's 2,000 or 3,000 jobs have this in their process. But it's not just the messaging at the front, it's the messaging all the way through that's important.
Yeah, and this is the one that actually started the whole initiative, because I was just so fed up of seeing this and thinking, why are we telling candidates this? Let's start to talk and say what we are going to do for candidates rather than what we're not going to do for candidates. You know, we ask candidates to apply. The least we can do is give them a response. So this is my number one pet hate. And there's just really no excuse for it. Unfortunately, we see a lot of employers do it. We see a lot of agencies do it. And the impact is massive. You know, I did the post the other day. There were, I think, 5,000 on Seek that had this. And if you had 30 applications applying, that's, I can't remember the maths off the top of my head, but 150,000 people, 10% get a response. You know, it's 130, 125,000 people that will never hear anything again. You know, it's just crazy. And if you've got the capability, the technical capability to post digitally, you've got the capability to respond digitally as well. Oh, you actually, I just see you've put the post I did this morning from REA Group up, which is awesome.
I am amazed. Hang on, I'm on mute.
No, you're not. You are now.
Honestly, my husband wishes I had this button. My husband wishes he has this button on a daily basis. And Steve, I did get the giggle. Steve and I have been joking on Facebook about using the words data versus data. And he starts with data and goes to data, and I go the other way. So it's about where you were brought up and where you lived, and if you're married to an English husband. So, but one of the things about messaging is the consistency and ensuring that each stage of the process you are feeding back with messaging. And so in our group, let's talk about what that messaging should look like. Just moving on, obviously a process is needed. There's a brilliant story I heard years ago from Medibank, where they found that they were just sending an email and a link to the assessment, and they had a massive drop-off between that, we'd like you to do this assessment part, and then from that they'd invite them into interview. So they did a bit of research and discovered that people were so afraid of the assessment that they just dropped out. So, yep, there's a process you need to have, and I'm a big believer in putting an assessment in the process for bias, to get rid of bias and to really get to the nitty-gritty of who the person is. And there's brilliant assessment products around that can do all of that. But once they actually put a step in their process where one of the recruitment team phoned and explained why they were doing the assessment and that they themselves had taken it and this was their experience, their drop-offs disappeared completely. So I'm going to bring Corey to the stage. So another one of our partners in Tribe is People Scout, who are a brilliant RPO and have some amazing services that they offer. So I'm going to get Corey to talk a little bit on process, because it is always our belief that RPOs have their process piece down pat. And sort of what does that mean for candidates? You know, what does a good process mean for candidates?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much, Andrea. Yeah, look, obviously the RPO, from an RPO perspective, the candidate journey is always at the heart of RPO offer. As Rich mentioned before, I think reducing that friction and reducing the friction through the process or the candidate journey, and as we know, the candidate journeys are the small pieces of the life cycle of the journey. So really reducing that friction, working with the HR team, working with hiring managers, and working with internal talent, because sometimes the talent team is not always ours. We're working with in-house talent people as well. So we're working with all of these different teams to make the candidate journey as seamless as possible. Look, some of the ways we do that to better impact the organisation during that journey is to make the selection process fair, robust, build efficiencies into the process, which is more cost effective, but also supports the overall delivery of what our clients are trying to do. So some of that is, we spoke a little bit around technology. So some of that is technology around tools to help. So we build microsites, we build career sites, so they understand what they're coming into. But we use behavioural selection, bespoke behavioural selection and assessment tools. We use virtual assessment exercises to bring them through that process. So that digital destination as such gives us the opportunity to bring the employer brand to life. I can go into an employer brand and EVP and all that sort of stuff for hours and how important it is, but I won't. But saying all that, it is a process, but regular communication, as Andrea just said and Steve said, regular communication and making the candidate feel valued and being respectful of their time, still number one. I'm an old school recruiter and it comes back to that every day of the week.
Now, I'm going to keep you on because I know People Scout do some brilliant sort of measuring and return on investment stuff. But, you know, this ability to measure the candidate experience means that you have often business cases for what else you need as a recruitment team. We all know the Vodafone story of £4 million was the amount that they lost through a bad candidate experience by people saying they'll never use Vodafone again. And there's a retail shop that I will never shop in again after an interview experience with them. So, and trust me, I am a big shopper. This is cutting completely into their profits. So I just sort of, both of you, some comments around the ROI and the measuring and what it is that it can tell us.
Yeah, for sure. I'll answer it quickly, just from our point of view on what we do. From a candidate perspective, everyone that goes through a process and gets to a certain stage, whether that each client is different, but if it's if it gets to interview stage, or we go back and survey each and every person. So from a candidate perspective and from a client perspective, we survey every person, and that is built into our KPIs of what we do back to our client. Everything is outcome based for us, and everything is so open and visible. It's not funny. So it's very rewarding. It's sometimes very eye opening, but it is very rewarding. Some of the feedback you get on where you think your process and your feedback and everything that you're doing is A1, and just the little nuances that you can change and move the dial to make it a better process.
And Steve, who is on mute.
Yeah, I think it is tricky to do our ROI. I think we need to talk the language of the business. I always talk about this. So one of the things I'm really see businesses is I don't think I've ever seen an application form that asks a candidate whether you are a current customer of that organization. So if I'm a customer, I don't know, Woolies, and I apply for a role, if we can measure that candidate experience and the impact that candidate experience has on the brand, and then report that back to marketing, that or sales or whatever it might be, to show the impact that talent acquisition has on the overall consumer brand. This is where ROI becomes really, really interesting, because it is then so much easier to go and get investment, because you're talking a completely different language. So if you can say, look, people that came into our process had an NPS for our consumer brand of X, and actually we improved it when they exited the process. That is a completely different conversation to have. You're on mute, Andrea.
Andrea, you're on mute.
Still on mute.
Still on mute.
Corey, let me ask you a question while we're waiting for Andrea.
Yeah.
Do you feed back those candidate survey reports to your clients, and what do they look for in terms of measurement? Ideally, what's the number one or two things that they want to see?
Yeah, definitely. So we run our normal client feedback is quarterly reviews, and that's one of the measures. So as I said before, we're very outcome focused for what we do. So it is part of our metrics, it's part of our KPIs to report that back. Sorry, what was the second part that you asked?
What do your clients want to see in terms of the measurement? What's the key thing that they're or trade or trend that they're really interested in?
Yeah, I think would you reapply? Yeah. Would you work? Would you buy from us? So what you just mentioned before is a question that we ask. So if they are a retail client or a hospitality or something like that, would you come back to us? Would you buy from us? Would you reapply? And how did you find the process? So they're probably the main ones that are coming out, which then we help that process the whole way through.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrea, you're still on mute.
Andrea.
So while we're waiting for Andrea, so just for in-house teams that aren't doing this, it is very, very easy to do. We started out doing this, I think, on SurveyMonkey or a very basic type survey to our candidates and clients. So it's not, you don't have to have the most up-to-date technology to do this. It's more just that regular contact and finding out and then feeding it back to teams and clients.
Yeah. And a little plug for the initiative. We're actually just building a candidate survey platform, which is going to serve. You're going to be able to survey candidates at each stage of the process. But then also, what's important is it's going to give you a dashboard, really easy dashboard to look at to see where you've got blockages or issues. But also, you're going to be able to benchmark against other organizations. You won't be able to see who the other organizations are, but benchmark against other organizations in your industry. Yeah, in your industry, and also the type of skills that you're recruiting for as well.
Awesome. No, love it.
You're back, Andrea.
It appears that when I come back, I then can't hear.
Can't hear you, Andrea.
Right, so shall I take the reins? I think we're talking about candidate feedback next. I'm not sure what we wanted to talk about there, but the importance, I guess this is around the importance of getting back to candidates and the quality of the feedback that we're providing. Andrew, did you have anybody coming on for this bit?
And I'm giving him broadcasting rights. Michelle's swapping my computer over. Oh, God, I wish we were back doing live events. Can you see me now? Can you hear me?
I can see you and hear you.
So Patrick Dunlop should be joining us on the stage. Dear Patrick, I've given you some the ability to join us. Patrick is a professor, an associate professor at Candidate University. We're going to share the link to the survey that we would like you all to do. They are doing lots of studies on talent acquisition, and he's got a survey at the moment on how the talent acquisition teams feel about talent acquisition. So, Patrick, what's some of your thoughts around candidate feedback?
Based on the research, thank you very much for that introduction. Based on the research that I've seen, giving feedback to candidates is one of the most powerful interventions for improving their responses or reactions to a selection process. And I noticed you mentioned earlier, Andrea, that even like you can give feed forward and feedback. So feed forward being where you provide candidates with an account of what's about to happen to them when they go into an assessment. And you mentioned earlier that massively improves improves your drop-off rates, as in you get lower drop-off rates when you explain to people in advance. But if you give people meaningful, detailed feedback after the process, especially if they've completed assessments that might seem a little bit abstract, like a personality questionnaire or an abstract cognitive test, people really value that. And you know, this kind of giving feedback's one thing, but exactly what do you say? Well, the basic form of feedback is, sorry, you didn't get the job, or yeah, you got the job. That's pretty crude. And I don't think you'll find that you'll find that feedback will make a difference as opposed to giving no feedback. And I think that's the point Steve's been making all throughout this. But if a candidate has invested a lot of time and energy in giving you lots of information about themselves, it's very clear that they appreciate getting feedback on what that means for their application, what that might mean for future applications. And yeah, the research is clear on the benefits of that. But the questions that often get asked at this point by talent acquisition people, and they're very reasonable questions, is what risks am I taking by giving people detailed feedback? Am I risking things like, you know, being accused of being discriminatory, or you know, having to really drill down into the finer details to pinpoint the exact one thing that meant that I didn't get the job? What was that one thing? And if I just improve that, and of course we know selection doesn't work like that. But I think my response to that is a lot of the assessment systems I've seen, a lot of the good ones do have impressive candidate level reports. So a lot of the personality assessments and work styles assessments and cognitive assessments have offer you know, feedback features. And a lot of the digital video interviewing platforms I've seen allow candidates to log back in and have a look at their responses and encourage their candidates to, you know, sit down with a coach or with a family member and get some feedback from them. And to my surprise, in speaking with the service providers of these sorts of assessments, it seems that very few people actually use those services, and I've always wondered why that was, and I'd be really keen to learn more about that if that's possible. Yeah, so that's my response to your question, Andrea.
Patrick, that was a great response. So, so what we're going to do now, Steve, do you have any final comments? Because I'm going to move to the roundtable discussion on this, because I think we were going to. I think that was the end of it. I've got myself a little embarrassment now, folks. Of course, yes, that was the end of the.
Can I just say one thing on that point? I think because it's one of the biggest things I hear when I talk to employers about the initiative is that feedback is the worrying about the level of feedback we're giving. Is it going to put us in a position where, you know, it could land us in some legal hot water? And therefore we don't give that feedback. You know, the answer isn't to that problem isn't to not give feedback. The answer is to make sure you've got a measured, fair and robust recruitment process, not sort of sweep it necessarily under the carpet and not respond. So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear some more information and data on that, Patrick, at some point.
And I'm noticing Paula's in the chat group from a do not reply email. Had a talent function. Everything came from us as human beings. The ATS was set up so that it came from the person. If the ATS couldn't set it up, then our contact details were on the email. There was always a phone number where people could contact us and talk to us about their application. And I had a friend applying for a very senior HR role, and there was nowhere to contact these people. So, and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, our talent acquisition people don't speak to candidates." I mean, mind blown. Honestly, what the hell are we doing? Isn't that our job? Now, I could go on and rant. I seem to be doing a lot of ranting these days. So what we're going to do now, folks, is we're actually going to move to a roundtable discussion. And you're each on a table that has a topic. You are welcome to move around the tables if you would like, and you just hover over an empty chair and double click to join that. So have some discussions around, why is this going wrong? What is it that we're not getting right? And why is that the case? But also, what are we going to commit to today as talent acquisition professionals around, you know, what are we going to take away from today's discussion? And it could be join Circle Back Initiative. It could be getting in touch with our partners around the services that they offer. And I'm sorry, Kat from N-Border couldn't join us today around the onboarding. But have that discussion, and you have got 20 minutes to have that discussion. So I'll turn the presentation off. So what is it we're getting wrong? Why are we getting it wrong? And what are we going to commit to today to get it right? Off you go.